Hi everyone, welcome to the channel again. If you are an old subscriber, you are very welcome back, and if you are new, you are welcome maybe for the first time. And this is a Q&A. I've asked people on my community page for the channel to ask me questions, and I've got a few questions which I will try to answer today. If you come up with new questions, write them in the comment field below, or if you have new questions in relation to what I answer, you can add questions as well in the comment field. So the first question is, outside of the Malazan Book of the Fallen or the Malazan universe and world, which books are my favorite books? I've collected a few books. They are here in front of me, and they represent some of my favorites, but they also represent different themes that I'm very interested in reading about. So the first book is actually a Swedish title, but you can get it in English, probably called The Religious Man. It's looks like this. It's by Ove Wikström and Anton Gils. Maybe it's Dutch, I'm not sure. It's about the religious man, and as you might have guessed, I'm not, only reading for entertainment. I have usually an academic interest, you could say, in what I'm reading, or academic lens, you could say. And this book is about why are people religious? How come that humans believe in God or gods or spirits? It's an interesting book. I read it a lot of times, both because I'm interested in my own, in myself, and I'm a believer, you could say. I have a um, strong spiritual awareness, you could say. And this book is not written in a disrespectful way towards those who believe, but it's interesting to see what you could say sociological aspects there are of faith and religion, and why this is so common on Earth, in our world. So this is a book, I've read it many times. I go back and forth to it, and it is very interesting in relation to, for example, Malazan, Lord of the Rings, Narnia, which has a strong Christian theme as well. So that's one book, and that's one type of book, you could say, that I read. It's not only this book, there are other books as well. Another book I have here, which is related to spirituality, is Hermann Hesse. He's Siddhartha. Maybe you know about this, and if you don't, I recommend you to read it. It's only 170 pages, and it starts out like it's about Siddhartha, the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, one of the Buddhas. So the story starts out like that in a way, and then a lot of other things happens. We get to follow this Siddhartha, who grows up as a Brahmin in India, and he, like the Buddha, sees all the suffering, and that doesn't feel good for him. So he goes out on a quest, to find the meaning of life. And in this story, he meets a lot of things that the original Buddha, so to speak, doesn't meet, and it makes us reflect on life, our own values, and what's the purpose of everything, and what is materialism is important or not. This Siddhartha is working, he's meditating, he withdraws from society to meditate. He tries different kind of lifestyles, you could say, and I've read this many times as well. I had it actually in one yoga education that I took a few years ago, a yoga teacher education. And I think it's very easy to get hold of, to buy and find in stores or online. especially if you have a Kindle or anything reading device, digital reading device, and it's quite beautiful as well, I think. So these books reflects my own journey, search for myself, search for the soul, what is the purpose of everything. I think that's important to think about. So Siddhartha, this book has played a big importance for me in that quest, you could say. A completely different book, so now there will be some other books, is this one. Maybe it's surprising because it's a sports book, and then it's surprising because it's a baseball. Because I live in Sweden, it's not so common that people watch baseball. I have a lot of American friends that have learned me to watch baseball, so I enjoy it. I mean, one of the reasons is because it's quite meditative, at least from here over the pond, the other side of the pond. Maybe it's something different in North America, but they catch and they throw, and it takes a lot of time to watch a game. And it's, in a way, I think baseball is quite a philosophical sport, sometimes, at least. This is a book by Ben Lindbergh and Sam Miller. They are connected to a webpage which is quite famous in baseball circles called Fangraph, and this book is interesting because they have through mathematics or sabermetrics, you could say, analytics, tried to create and build a baseball team, which they also manage. I think this is a real life experiment, and you could say it's easy to make stats and statistics and analytics as an expert, but it's more difficult to implement them in reality and in practice. And this is a quite humorous book and totally different from what I talk about on the channel. I have some sports books actually. Usually it's ice hockey, it's football or soccer, as some people say, and then sometimes baseball. So I've been playing a lot of sports when I was a child, so this is still with me a lot. Another book that is very famous for you in North America, this is a Swedish version. It's the Wrath of Grapes, right? The translation. Wrath of Grapes. John Steinbeck. No surprise, I mean, what the book is about. It's about the 1930s in the United States during the, as I understand it, depression and all the climate with all the storms and winds and harsh conditions that people had during that decade. It's a social realistic book and about the struggles, trying to live a good life, an ordinary, decent life, and it's also about solidarity. I think it's about the human condition and humanity. It has a lot of spiritual themes, I would say. I think it's a very tragic but beautiful book. I recommend you to read it if you haven't. Can this tie into fantasy then? Even if the question was outside of fantasy, what do I read? I think it does, because I think some of the new fantasy, which usually is called grimdark, or at least less grimdark, they have a lot of social realistic themes, sociological themes in the books. So these ideas of genres is maybe more a selling thing for the booksellers, but in reality all the genres blend. So this is one book that I've read a lot of times. If you're interested of me reviewing some of these books I show, please write it in the comment below as well. Another book is these are poems. It's Leonard Cohen, something I listen to quite a lot. Neil Young, Leonard Cohen, Bob Dylan are some of my favorite music. This is a beautiful collection of poems. Let us compare mythologies. It was published in 1956, and it was his debut. And Leonard Cohen is more of a poet and a singer and a musician, I would say, even if I like his style. But I think he went into music with, he wanted to write poems, and he found music a good way to express his poems. Uh, these poems in here, they are beautiful. They have a lot of course, spiritual themes, and philosophical themes about life and about Christianity. But I think it's a crossover, uh, multiple faiths, so you can read it anyway. And actually, Leonard Cohen I think he was a Zen monk later in life, a Buddhist monk. So I think this is very interesting for you to read about contemplation and the conditions of life. I've read it many times as well. So I usually have books that I go back and forth to. I usually reread, as you understand already. And so even if there are, I think, many books in my bookshelves, the variety is maybe a bit restricted. I have two books more, and that is a Swedish author, the city of dreams, or the city of my dreams, it says here, Mina Drömmarstad, Per Anders Fogelström. And this is also, I mean, it's a bit connected to Steinbeck, Jan Steinbeck, and it's about Stockholm, and it's in 1860, and they live in a part of Stockholm that is called, it's the south it's called, Söder, and back then it was very, very poor, and now it's a fancy part of Stockholm, quite expensive to live. But you can still go there if you're a tourist, if you want to see old buildings and so on. It's a working class history, you could say, and a lot of tragic life stories and about their struggles. And in that sense, it's quite related to the Steinbeck book that I showed earlier. So I read a lot of social realistic literature, American, Swedish, and also some Danish before. So I think that's it's an interesting thing, and important books to read, important stories to learn from, I think. The last book is about philosophy, which I'm very fond of, and this is Pierre Hadot, and it's what's ancient philosophy. So this book describes ancient philosophy, what it is, and also discusses how it could be implemented in real life today, in a way. So I think this is interesting. It's not only a historical account on ancient philosophy, it also has the intention to inspire us to use philosophy in our everyday. We actually use philosophy every day. Every person does that, even if he or she doesn't know about that. But this is a good reminder of that. I have more books, of course, but I will stop there because there were more questions. But I hope that you found this interesting. As I said, there are many more books here in the bookshelf that are not fantasy. I have omitted sci-fi, and I have omitted some of my mythological literature because I think it ties into fantasy. So let's move on to the second question, and that is my favorite real-world pantheon and why. Very difficult question, but I think I say I have three, but I don't know everything about every pantheon, of course, pantheons in the world. So maybe I will change my mind in the future. Maybe you have some good advice on great pantheons to explore. But of course, the Norse mythology, the pantheon here in Scandinavia, has been very interesting to me since I was a small boy. And I mean, we have street names named after the gods. I think the the Wednesday here is related to, or the weekdays are related to the Norse gods, some of the days at least. There are special rune, I think it's called like that in English, rune stones. It's stones with the Viking alphabet. It's memorial stones of people who have been on an adventure and died, or it could be different things. They exist here in Sweden. You can find them when you're out in nature, and so it's an existing, living heritage you can find outside in nature, and there are a lot of folklore stories that still exist today. I've talked about that earlier on the channel, so obviously that mythology has drawn my attention from when I was a small boy. Also, the Hinduism, the Hindu pantheon, because of my Indian roots and my journeys back to India, which I will tell you more about later here on the channel. It kind of overlaps, my Swedish upbringing and my Swedish roots that I have here relates to Norse mythology, and then I have my Indian or Hindu roots, which relates to India, of course. And I mean, the Hindu pantheon is huge, or there is, like you're saying, there is one god, or there are millions of gods. It depends on how you look at it. I think the Norse mythology and the stories, they are focused. They're focused on a lot of things, like how the world came to be, and how different races came to be, and how the landscape came to be, like all mythological stories. But the gods, maybe they are more, simple gods in a way, because it's about a lot of power, and it's a lot about war, and it's a lot about fertility, etc. Whereas the Hindu gods, I would say, are more. They have that too. I mean, like Hanuman, powerful god, for example, and you have Ganesha as a remover of obstacles. But it's more a philosophical tone in the Hinduistic pantheon, and that is something I really appreciate. I think Norse mythology and the pantheon is more focused on nature, I would say, and then there's more philosophical aspect in the Hindu pantheon. There is a lot you can learn from both pantheons. But there are so many interesting stories within Hinduism, and many of those stories are related to Buddhism as well. But Buddhism has no pantheon, obviously, and there is no God in Buddhism. But the stories and what you can learn from there are, seers and reflections on how life is as it is and how life was created, especially a book called the Upanishad. I would really recommend you to read a bit, or at least search on Google or Wiki or anything. If you're into this, meditation, contemplation, and the relation to spirituality and gods, etc. I think that is an interesting book to read. And then there is the Greek mythology, which I really like. And I would say it's not so easy to divide them like this, but if we say that Norse mythology is more related to nature, and then you have Hindu mythology or the Hindu gods related to spiritual and philosophical aspects, and then the Greek mythology covers a lot of these things as well, but it has an important theme that I don't think exists so obviously in the other two pantheons, and that is psychology. So when you read a story about how the world came to be, and the gods and their children, and what happened, are many tragic stories and quite obscene stories in Greek mythology. I think relates a lot to the human psyche and psychology. The science of psychology as well. So if I would, I don't want to rate the pantheons, even if that was the question, but I find them all, very interesting. But if there are, I think both the Hindu pantheon and the Greek pantheon maybe are more interesting than the North pantheon, because the pantheon is much more complex and they have much more complex relationships to each other as well. So that might be an answer, but don't take it for a truth, and I might change. But it was a very interesting question, so thank you for that. The third question, if you are still here, is about how I discovered Malazan and my immediate impressions. And I will answer this quickly because I talk a lot about Malazan on the channel, but a friend recommended me Malazan, Book of the Fallen. He really thought I would like the book, and he was obviously very correct in that, assumption. But and I read it here in this apartment. Had just moved in, and I was totally hooked. Mostly because I got so many questions. Why? Who's that? Why is this happening? The gods. How does it work? The Warrens. How does it function? It was a deep world, a vast world, and something that I could spend a lot of time in. I thought, and I had right. So I got immersed very, very quickly, and I read it on my iPhone because I didn't have the patience to wait for the books that I had ordered. And I was really drawn into it. It felt right. It felt like something I could really enjoy, and especially I didn't know that then, but the archaeological aspect, historical aspect that Malazan has. You can feel that it's a lived world and it's a lived history, and people there seem to have a lot of struggles and pains, and we have the privilege of following them. All this made it attractive to me, and maybe if you look at the books I presented earlier, you might see some traces of things that go into Malazan. We have this more scientific approach on faith and religion, and that exists in Malazan because you have believers and you have people who don't believe, and you have secular people, etc. You have the philosophical aspects, and you also have a lot of social realistic perspectives in Malazan Book of the Fallen, and no sports, but I think they play some kind of board game in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and later they have some competitions among the soldiers with some animals. I won't spoil that; it's no big spoiler, but they have to have some fun as well with competition, and they have a very tough life, the Malazan soldiers. So that was an answer to that. Immediate impressions, yes, totally hooked. This is something I like. It triggered me in so many ways with the history, spirituality, archaeology, and the destinies, and the struggles of the people you follow there, and of course, all the races as well. And the last question for today is about my thoughts on the tabletop RPG industry. I'm very happy to have received that question. With that said, I read a lot of tabletop RPGs, like Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons, etc. I don't have a playgroup at the moment. I've been playing a lot when I was younger, but as you know, I play a lot of CRPGs on like Pillars of Eternity, which I've talked about here on the channel. So I'm very much involved in the, you can say, RPG world still. I think it's a I started to play tabletop RPGs in 1990. A very different world then, in so many ways. And I played a Swedish role-playing system called Dragons and Demons. It's a Swedish game developer, and I would like to talk more about that later on the channel. Uh, so it was in Swedish, everything, and you could actually be duck, which was a bit funny. I don't know if you could be that in the early Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe some of you know. Could you play as a duck? And then it was orcs and elves and everything that comes into fantasy. We had some friends, so we played together, and we started when we were only 10 years. But what I remember from how it is now is that, like everything now is so much more, of course. You can get lore books about Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons. You can play video games. You can now watch YouTube shows like Critical Role, for example. There are so much more resources, and when I was younger, we just had our imagination. There were, of course, a lot of adventures that you could buy in the store and use, but you only used it for your little group, and we didn't have, of course, YouTube like this, so we couldn't share our gameplay or we couldn't share our ideas. So if we were, we maybe were 5 to 10 people in my college. We liked to play TTRPG, so we gathered during the weekends from time to time. But we were probably the only one, so we were in a minority as well. Still, I think our TTRPGs and RPGs are, a niche, but it's much broader today, and you can connect with more people. I don't know if this, limits our imagination when we um, script and plan our role-playing sessions. I don't know if it affects the game developers of, Baldur's Gate 3, for example, and also Pillars of Eternity. And I think you have a game called Solasta too, which is coming out, I don't know, this year or maybe next year. I don't know how much this affects the industry in that sense. I suppose it's much more streamlined, but on the other hand, I have friends who play regularly, and they have very creative adventures and um, things happening during the gameplay sessions that no one could ever guess on in advance. So that's a few reflections. For those of you who asked me that questions, please fill in the comments below what you think about my thoughts. I would like to play more RPGs also in real life with real humans. Usually I have a group. We have a small group here, me and 3 friends, but we usually play board games. So please comment on this, my answer and my reflections on the TTRPG industry. Maybe you are more into that than I am today. So maybe you can add some interesting information and also increase my knowledge. So that was some answers on your questions. As I said, you might have more questions. Please add them in the comments below. And if you have follow-up questions, to those of you who recognize your questions, please add them too as well. So that was all for today, and I will see you next time. Have a great time. It's rainy here in Sweden today. Looks like autumn. I hope you have sun and sunshine. And until next time, bye.